At the moment, I think we just have, oh, Ibrahim has joined us, Ali has joined us. Let's see how many have joined to begin. Well, thank you, everyone. My name's Richard Brady, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to be the moderator of this session. I'm going to give participants a few more minutes to join, and we'll start in about 2 minutes from now. For the time being, please stay in the meeting, and we'll start in 2 minutes. We'll just give the latecomers time to join us, and then we'll begin.
And we can hopefully record the session to share it with those who may not be able to attend and have interest in.
I have already started recording, Professor.
Okay, very good.
Well, I think we should begin, all right?
Okay.
Well, now, formally then, let me welcome everybody to this webinar. And this is a webinar to introduce and answer questions and explain details about the new program, the International Law and Legal Practice program, which is a global postgraduate certificate and fellowship program, which is going to be provided by Euclid University in collaboration with the British Legal Centre. My name is Richard Brady. I'm the head of the British Legal Centre. I'm the founder, and I'm also the chief instructor in relation to legal English, which is part of the programme. Today, we're going to be hearing from Professor Asa Harb, who is a senior state counsel in Egypt and a professor in international law and arbitration at the university. Professor Asa has a very distinguished legal career behind him, including working for the Egyptian Space Agency. He's been a chief legal advisor for the various ministries in the Egyptian government. He's worked at the Egyptian Ministry of Justice, as well as working for various international banks. Professor Asa Harb has received a number of questions from potential students, and he'll be running through those questions and providing answers later in our webinar. The program itself consists of 6 parts. It includes international law and treaty law, and then international litigation and arbitration. Then there's a module on international intellectual property law, and also we'll be dealing with international arbitration law, and a module on the international law of the sea. Then we come to my module, which I'll be taking charge of, which is International Legal English. Now, the British Legal Centre has been around about 14 years. We have developed a methodology of teaching legal English, and I'll speak about that a little later in our webinar. But as most of the programme is going to be administered by Euclid University, also called Pôle Universitaire Euclid, or Euclid University, which is an international intergovernmental organization under the auspices of the United Nations Treaty Series. I'm going to call upon Professor Laurent Kleineberg, who is the Oversight Chairman and International Faculty Coordinator of the university, to explain a little more about the methodology of teaching of the university's modules in the Postgraduate Certificate and Fellowship Programme. So, Professor Laurent, if I may, I'm going to hand over to you and just let you take over for a while to explain about the methodology of the university in its teaching and its courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. It's a privilege to be able to work on this new partnership with your institution. I think it's really going to be bringing two very good programs together. Euclid was established in 2008 to train diplomats primarily for its own member states. So we have currently 12 member states, and that was the intent. It still is to train diplomats for the member states. We have a number of ambassadors that have gone through Euclid and are now in office as ambassadors for many countries. So that's been really very successful. We've also trained diplomats from other countries, meaning outside our own family of member states. And we are also opening our programs to what we call general public students. So it's a great opportunity to plug into a program that has a record of training senior officials, and to also connect with an alumni network, which is really valuable for our students. As far as the method, the idea was to make our programs flexible and self-paced, because diplomats, as we all know, can be very busy. So the idea was to have something that we call self-paced and asynchronous, meaning that a student will connect to our platform. So when they come on board, of course, we first create an account for them on the platform. We also provide a very comprehensive manual on how to operate the platform and what is expected as far as there's some noise. I hope not from me, maybe from someone else. Maybe we can all mute, and I'll just keep my system going. But there's some static on other students. Hopefully it's not on my side. So once the activation takes place for a student, they have the handbook, they have access to the platforms, and they can just log on to the platform and access the course material. Now there's a very well-defined structure for each course. At Euclid, we have thought about it quite a bit. The idea was to structure or slice down a course into 7 periods. A period can last, it's flexible, it can last a few days, so it's rare. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. And this meant that if someone wants to go for 2 weeks per period, 7 periods means 14 weeks, maybe 15 with a little break, and that means 1 semester on campus in the United States. So it allowed for our programs to be comparable to on-campus programs by virtue of lasting, at least in theory, 2 weeks per period equals 14 weeks equals a semester. In practice, a student will go through the 7 periods, during which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are typically what we call study periods. They have access to the main PDF, which is typically book chapters, some articles. We select what we think are the best textbooks, the best material for the topic. So the idea is to download the PDF, to study it, maybe highlight the PDF, to also watch the video that has been assigned at the same time alongside the PDF. And at the end of the week, I recommend always a week per period. So maybe on the weekend, the student should write a response paper. And we provide, of course, guidance, we provide samples, we provide a template, and an RP, as we call it, is an interactive, so personal about 3-page document, single-spaced, in which the idea is to demonstrate that there is reading, there's studying, there's interaction with the material. So we ask the students to select 5 to 7 key concepts. So it could be what is a treaty, it could be reservation, it could be simple signature, it could be anything that they find in the assigned material for that period that they find important to mention. So they then upload or email the response paper, and then they get feedback, approval, and they move on to the second period. Again, second RP, and go on to the third, fourth, fifth response paper. Those are fairly short. They take about 45 minutes to write, as long as there's a good note being taken while reading the material, either on Kindle or on the PDF. Now, at the end of the 5 periods or 5 response papers, there's a request to create a quiz. So we don't actually make them take a quiz. We make students create a quiz. We say, if you were the teacher for this course, what 10 questions would you ask from your students? And they have to create 10 questions and suggest 4 plausible answers, choose the correct one, indicate where in the textbook or the periods the correct answer was to be found. So we were able to kind of make them think, if they were teaching this, would they be able to create a proper quiz or examination? So it's a really interesting exercise. At the end of these 5+1 periods comes the last period, number 7. During this period, students are asked to write a major paper. So that's about 14 pages, double-spaced, with footnotes. We ask for about 20 to 25 references in the bibliography. We provide, of course, again, templates, samples. We indicate what referencing we would like to see, which is Arabian. And often we actually indicate 1, 2, or 3 possible titles or topics for the major paper. So recently, to give you an idea, we've had students write about the Minsk Accords, or to write about the Abraham Accords and to analyze them from a legal perspective. But we can also obviously entertain other suggestions or requests by the student to write something more aligned with their interests. And then we receive the major paper, we grade it, we set feedback. There might be some editing. Sometimes there's a couple of back and forth emails to get it finalized, approved, and filed. And then the last step is an oral examination, which typically takes about half an hour. And we focus, in the case of national law and treaty law, we focus on, what makes a document either binding or non-binding. What words are used? Is it, agree, decide, shall, will? And so we really want our students to be able to articulate clearly what makes international law binding, and be able to give examples from the textbooks and the videos. So that completes a typical course, and that can be 7 weeks at 1 week per period, or it could be 14 weeks, which I think is a bit too long for the slower paced 1 period every 2 weeks. But again, my recommendation, the vision is that there's a commitment to do 1 period per week and complete a Euclid course in 7 weeks. It could be 6, but 7 is really a good target. Hope that is clear, and I'm sure that there'll be questions, although I will have to leave the session in a few minutes. But my colleague, Professor Harb, who was experienced with all this, can also answer the questions.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was very interesting. I'm particularly interested in the aspect of asking, what an excellent idea, to ask the students to prepare their exam, the quiz, if you like. It shows that obviously they have to study the books in order to be able to know which parts of the quiz. It also indicates to me, or I think I would use it to show, so that you can see what aspects of the course or of most interest to the students. That was a very
Absolutely.
interesting idea. Very interesting idea. I better mention, before I move on to Professor Asa Mahmoud Harb, I will just mention the objective of the programme is intended to enable legal professionals and fresh graduates to deepen their knowledge of international law and legal practice. And the whole point is that the programme provides very high quality training by prominent international law scholars such as yourself, Professor, and Professor Al-Harb, and we haven't mentioned him because you're not in today's meeting, but also Professor Ludovic Chanton, who's a professor in international law at EUCLID, will also be one of the professors providing training in this course. And it's the broad range of core topics of international law that I think will develop the abilities of the participants to function as international lawyers.
Indeed.
That's so important today. In today's world, if you can't practice internationally, your legal career is not really going to go very far. Every major law firm, every major company, every government, every entity, institute practices or works internationally. If you can't deal with international law, you can't work in that area. And just as the language of international business is English, so the language of international law is legal English. So I'm delighted to see this development. Well, Professor Lord, I think now move to you, Professor Asa Harb, if I may, unless any of the participants who are in the meeting now have any questions they want to raise at this point regarding what Professor Laurent Kieneberg has run through with you. If you have, unmute yourselves, but I don't think anybody's going to do that. So if I might ask you, Professor Asa Harb, can I ask you to take over and deal with the other points that you are going to deal with, and also deal with those questions you've already received?
Thank you very much, Mr. Praddy, for the introduction. At the outset, I would like to welcome all the participants and special welcome to my colleagues from the Lusus Authority in Egypt. Okay. Actually, I have received several questions during the previous period regarding the postgraduate certificate and fellowship program, and I have gathered all these questions and prepared small PowerPoint presentation to answer these questions in details. So what I'm going to do now is going to run the presentation and try to answer each of these questions in more details. Okay?
Please go ahead, Professor. I'm going to mute myself again just so you can take over with no background noise.
Okay, just a moment. I guess you now can see the presentation, the slides?
Okay, we see this.
Okay. Typically, most of the questions revolve around the program structure, how long the program and the fellowship is, and when our program begins, what are the graduation requirements, how many courses do you take in the program, is the program full-time or part-time program, is there any residency requirements for the program, what are the program assessment methods, and how can the postgraduate certificate and fellowship program elevate your legal career? The first question is, how long is the postgraduate certificate and fellowship program? According to our academic calendar and the program timeline, the program duration should not be less than 5 months and should not exceed 8 months. It depends upon the time you allocate for your study weekly. Ideally, the program can be easily completed in 6 months, assuming that you allocate 10 to 14 hours for study weekly. The suggested allocated time covers attending live lectures, reading materials, and completing assignments and home tasks. When our program begins, it is planned to start the program during the last week of January 2025. However, it should be noted that the program will start only if the minimum number of students has been reached. Thus, the start date is subject to change. Registered students will be notified by email in case of any change regarding the start date. But actually, I encourage all prospective participants to register as soon as possible in the program just to reserve their place, because most probably the start will be as planned during the last week of January 2025. What are the graduation requirements? There is only one requirement in order to obtain the prestigious postgraduate certificate of EUCLID and be admitted as a fellow of the School of Diplomacy and International Affairs at EUCLID University for 5 years. The requirement is the successful completion of 6 intensive international law and legal practice courses. The above-mentioned requirements, just one requirement, it entails that you should interact with other students during live lectures, complete assignments and home tasks to the full satisfaction of your professors and instructors, and pass the final oral exam at the end of the program. As you know, we have 6 courses. 3 courses are to be delivered by the British Legal Center, and the other 3 courses will be delivered by EUCLID University. Thankfully, Professor Kliniwark has just explained the pedagogical methodology of EUCLID, and just after I complete my presentation, I invite Mr. Richard to just throw light on the methodology, the educational methodology of the British Legal Center. But for now, you have to know that there's difference between the 2 methodologies. The British Legal Center in general depends on live sessions. The 30 hours of live sessions, along with home tasks, of course, will be used for the 3 courses that will be delivered by the British Legal Center. Regarding EUCLID, it depends on distance education as explained by Professor Kliniwark. How many courses do you take in the program? As said by Mr. Pradi and Professor Kliniwark, we have 6 courses, and you should complete the following 6 courses in order: Advanced Legal English for International Legal Practice, International Law and Treaty Law, International Environmental Law, International Litigation and Arbitration, International Intellectual Property, International Law of the Sea. And for more details, we have prepared a very detailed and informative brochure for the program. You can easily scan the QR code on the screen now to have the complete brochure in PDF format. And I think you will find it in the comments. If I may ask Mr. Abu Bakr to upload the brochure to the chat of the webinar. Okay?
Exactly. Brochure on the chat and the link of British Legal Center website.
Perfect. The next question is whether the program is full-time or a part-time program. Actually, the program is originally designed to be a part-time program. We understand that most of prospective participants are busy professionals. So we have designed the program to be a part-time program. It is ideal for working legal professionals, and as I said before, you should allocate only 10 to 14 hours weekly to complete the whole program within 6 months. Is there any residency required for the program? All the program courses are delivered online, either as live lectures by the British Legal Centre, as I have just said, or through the Learning Management System LMS of Euclid University, as explained by Professor Kliniewak. Even assignments and home tasks will be communicated to your assigned professor or instructor by email, and feedback will also be communicated to you by email. Therefore, no residences at all are required for the program. What are the program assessment methods? We use both formative and summative assessments during the program. Performance of participants at various stages will be monitored and evaluated by the assigned professor or instructor. Formative assessments, such as response papers in case of courses delivered by Euclid University, will let students show that they are learning, while summative assessments, such as major papers and oral exams, let participants show what they have learned. A final oral exam will be conducted for each student at the end of the whole program and not at the end of each course. Just at the end of the whole program, we will conduct one oral exam through a committee composed of the professors of all courses, and you will be examined orally in each course, but at the same time, okay? The last and the most important question, I guess, which I have received is how can the postgraduate certificate and fellowship program elevate your legal career? Recognizing the specific challenges of pursuing a career in international law, I have reached out to several Euclid students and graduates who have either worked or continue to work in international law with the aim to provide you with a clear and concise piece of advice to finding your path in international law after successfully completing the program. As you will see in the pie chart, some students, some graduates or current students of Euclid works for the government, others work for international governmental organizations, others work for non-governmental organizations, others joined academia, others work for law firms, others work for multinational corporations, and others work for the judiciary. Others decided to pursue the PhD degree, and a small percentage of Euclid graduates who studied international law have other positions in other institutions. It should be noted that international law is a highly dynamic work environment. It is not static. So this is attributed to the changing political and economic circumstances that require a variety in work style and of seeking employment. You will find international law that match our program structure. If you decided to work for a government, for example, you can work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the International Cooperation Department, in any ministry, and you can work for the Ministry of Justice, you can work for the Ministry of Finance, for the Ministry of Environmental Affairs, Maritime Affairs, Intellectual Property, Policy Analysis, etc. If you make your decision to work for an international governmental organization, you can start applying for vacancies with the United Nations Legal Office, International Maritime Organization, Global Environment Facility, Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, World Intellectual Property Organization, World Bank, United Nations Environment Program, International Monetary Fund, African Union, International Court of Justice, international courts and tribunals in general, and for EUCLID as an intergovernmental organization. If you make your decision to work for an ungovernmental organization, you have, for example, International Federation of Intellectual Property Attorneys, Advisory Committee on Protection of the Sea, International Law Association, Greenpeace, Earth Justice, International Union for Conservation of Nature, Nature Conservancy, African Society of International Law, etc. If you decided to work for academia, and if you meet other requirements, you can pursue a career in academia. For example, a teaching assistant, if you decide to work with postgraduate certificate and fellowship after completing your program, you can join academia as a teaching assistant, and if you pursue your LLM or your PhD degree, you can be promoted to lecturer, senior lecturer, and associate professor and professor later on. You can also work for a law firm like the International Arbitration Group of a Magic Circle law firm such as Freshfields, White & Case, King & Spalding. Multinational corporations such as Microsoft, Facebook, Google, PP, Siemens, Shell, Total, all these corporations have divisions for international legal affairs. If you decided to work for the judiciary, you can join as a judge, prosecutor, or state attorney. If you decided to complete your study, your postgraduate study, by pursuing your LLM or a PhD degree, you should know that you have some transferable credits. You can pursue your LLM or PhD in international law and treaty law, and and you can have some credits transferred to your degree because of the postgraduate certificate. You have some courses that can give you transferable credits for your further studies. Other jobs like international law editor, arbitration reporter, international law correspondent, international law trainer, etc. Now I have answered almost all the questions that I have received. Just one moment, I'll have to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Professor. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I'm going to take over. Well, I'm going to take over, if I may, and just tell you a little bit about the teaching methodology of the British Legal Centre. We were originally formed in order to teach young lawyers legal English to improve their basic practical abilities in writing contracts, legal writing, legal English, and then we broadened the scope of our courses to include some law, especially in areas which weren't covered by universities. So we started to look at how to do it type courses, in the sense of teaching people how to run a merger and acquisition, how to draft an oil and gas lease, how to conduct or administer FIDIC international construction contracts. We, in our legal English course, tend to use a series of topics in a textbook which we produce ourselves, and the legal topics, which cover a wide range of commercial and company law and contract law topics are the pegs upon which we hang each lesson. So the legal English course is 30 hours. It's 30 lessons. Every lesson is recorded, and all these recordings are made available to the students so they can refresh their memory. Each lesson will involve the ability, or is aimed at improving the ability of the participants in legal English. So it will involve speaking, listening, reading, and then the workbook which we provide to the participants will allow them to perform their own exercises and check their own work in relation to legal writing. Now that's improving their general legal English. When it comes to the two other courses which the British Legal Centre will be looking at, which involve the international law of the sea, again, we write our own textbooks. So it'll be our textbook, which will include some self-study exercises and suggested model answers for the participants to work through. And again, with international intellectual property. Again, we write our own textbook. We try to make the textbooks, the course itself, as practical as possible. Whilst we're dealing with legal topics, we want it to be as practical as possible. It's more or less courses on how to do it, the main points that you'll come across in relation to international intellectual property and the issues of international copyright and which areas of different industries that will be involved with these issues. So we try to make our courses as practical as possible because most of our students are practicing lawyers. And as Professor Harbers mentioned, they're busy professional lawyers. They haven't got time to deal with theory. So we try to make them as practical as possible. In relation to our teaching methodology, we tend, because we're teaching English as legal English as well as law, we tend to use what is called the CELTA method of teaching. That is, we start each class by getting people to think about the topics we're going to cover. Then we show them something, we teach them something. Then we give them exercises and we talk to them to get them practicing their English and to converse with us and the other students. And then we require them to produce something, either to answer questions or complete exercises in the lesson. Then we go back and start again with the next topic in the same lesson. We introduce the topic, we get the students thinking about it, then we get them talking about it, then we show them and teach them something, and then we get them to practice it. And that's the end of the lesson. And then we get them to complete exercises from the workbook so they can check their own answers and cement the knowledge which they've gained, hopefully, during the lesson. Right, well, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to pass over now to Mr. Abu Bakr, who is our representative in Egypt, representative of the British Legal Centre in Egypt, who's going to deal with the financial aspects of the course. So, Mr. Abu Bakr, can I invite you to unmute yourself and then take over to deal with the financial aspects of the course?
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Welcome, everyone. I'm here to explain what is the payment method and the procedures for payment. Number one, payment method is divided about participate location. Actually divided about participants live inside the Egypt and other participants live outside the Egypt. If you live inside the Egypt, we provide a flexible payment method. Actually, if you have a credit card or debit card or wallet with Egyptian pound, okay? But if you live outside the Egypt, you can pay with all ways. If you have PayPal or credit or debit card or any way. Okay, but if you live inside the Egypt and have a credit card or PayPal, I prefer you pay directly with dollar. So don't take a lot of time. Let's do this on the website. You will go to British Legal Centre website and click on online courses and choose Euclid University Certificate Program. You will see there brief of the course and then the details. Click on details. At the end of this page, you will see two links. This link number one for the people who live in Egypt, and the link number two for the any participant live outside the Egypt. If you live inside the Egypt, you will click there, and you will put there your details. I will put now my data. So please make sure the email and phone and use this, because we will connect with you from this is that. After this, click next, and if you have a wallet, any wallet or any card, you will do this. After this, pay now, and congratulations, you will be with us on the group. But if you in Egypt, you will click on this link and follow all of this that, and our customer support will call you or send an email to send for you all of our payment methods. If PayPal, if you want to pay with PayPal or bank transfer or credit card. This only. If you have any question about payment, I'm here. If you want to know about payment process, we have installments and the registration fee. The registration fee is $100. First installment will be after the program start in January, will be $500, and the second installment will be after 2 months, will be $480, and installment after other 2 months will be $300. Okay, about convert. When you want to convert the price of the dollar, you will see what is Bank of Egypt say, and we'll convert this. Professor Asser, you say anything?
No. Please proceed.
Yes, Professor Asser, if you speak, I don't hear you.
Nothing. I was muted.
Okay. We convert the dollar price about the Central Bank of Egypt. This is the only. And thank you. If you have any question, I'm here to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar.
You're welcome, sir.
Well, there's something I want to add, if I may, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but I want to, now that we're coming to the end of this webinar, I just want to express my delight and the fact that I feel so honoured that British Legal Centre has this opportunity to collaborate with Euclid University to offer this programme to lawyers around the world. I haven't mentioned, because I've been in an area where there was no internet for the last week, that our British Legal